Chuck Rosenberg, thank you for being here on an important day while we are bracing for what could be this potential indictment against the former president. Can you put into context what happened yesterday? You have Robert Costello, an attorney for Mr. Trump, appearing before the grand jury based on our reporting, essentially saying that Michael Cohen is a liar, cannot be trusted at his word. You heard Vaughn there say this was a little bit of a Hail Mary. From a legal perspective, was that what it was, or could there be a real impact here? Could it slow down the process?
Yeah, I find that unlikely, Kristen. So New York State has a quirky law, something we don't have in the federal system, that permits a defendant, or in this case, a subject of a grand jury investigation, to ask that the grand jury hear from one of their witnesses, somebody who will tell the grand jury why he ought not be charged, or in this case, why the grand jury ought not credit one of the government's witnesses. So it's a little bit of a quirky procedure. Remember, though, grand juries only need to find probable cause, a relatively low standard. By the way, it comes from the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution in order to issue an indictment. So, yes, it's a bit of a Hail Mary. I would be surprised if it worked. I imagine that the prosecutors have put in lots of evidence far in excess of the probable cause standard that they need to meet in order for the grand jury to return what we call a true bill, a valid indictment.
And just thinking about Michael Cohen as a witness, you have said before, witnesses do not have to be priests and nuns. What is the relevance or significance of a Michael Cohen being interviewed by a grand jury and playing a role in that process?
Yeah, Kristen, look, I wish when I was a federal prosecutor that all of my witnesses were nuns and librarians. That would have made it easy. But that's not how crime works. Yeah. And so it's not unusual at a criminal trial to have a criminal testify about the crime. So when you have that, when you have an inside criminal source or someone with criminal knowledge or culpability, you wouldn't predicate a case entirely on that person. That would be risky. But you would try and have that person corroborated by documents and other witnesses. So this case won't rise or fall solely on the testimony of Michael Cohen. When he gets on the stand, he'll be an important witness if he does get on the stand. And if he does get on the stand, he'll be cross-examined, I imagine, vigorously. But a prosecutor would be wise in any case like this, and there are many around the country every day in state and federal court where criminals are now testifying for the government against their co-conspirators. A prosecutor would be wise to corroborate it in any way that she can.
And just thinking about this case, big picture, Chuck, obviously there are a number of investigations swirling around the former president. There's the investigation in Georgia into attempts to overturn the election results there. There's the investigation by the Attorney General into January 6th. You have Republicans pointing out about this New York case that the SDNY didn't take it up. They say that proves this is not a serious case. I, of course, don't want you to weigh in on the politics of this, but from a legal perspective, when you take the swirl of cases around the former president, how serious is this New York case?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let's assume the public reporting is correct. This appears to be the least serious case of the cases we know about. That doesn't mean it's not an important case or a valid case, or it doesn't mean it ought not be brought. When I was a prosecutor, I thought of cases really sort of in two dimensions. Do we have compelling evidence, evidence that's admissible and relevant and compelling, and that will withstand appeal? Do we have good evidence? And do we have a serious offense? So you might have compelling evidence here, meaning it's not a weak case, Kristen, but compared to efforts to overthrow the 2020 election or submit fake electors or to instigate a riot or an insubordination or an insurrection at the Capitol, this is less serious than that. Again, valid? Let's wait and see the charges. Important? Sure. As important as some of these other investigations? Probably not. But that doesn't mean it's not a valid case.
And Chuck, just very quickly before I let you go, this New York case carries risk for the prosecutors as well, doesn't it?
Oh, sure. I mean, anytime you bring a case in court, you have to have evidence sufficient to win it before a jury and sustain it on appeal. And so prosecutors are going to be careful in what they charge and how they charge it. And by the way, with all the criticism being aimed at Mr. Bragg in this case, if Mr. Trump's attorneys have a concern about the way it's charged or some procedural defect, the way you make that claim, the way you fight that fight is in court with a motion in front of a judge, not on Capitol Hill, not on television, right, and not by hunking your horns outside of the courthouse. If you have a problem, if you have a concern, file a motion in court and let a judge hear it.
All right, Chuck Rosenberg, thank you so much for joining us. I know we're going to be turning to you a lot over the next few weeks. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.